Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and I'm here to discuss the very fascinating case of Teresita Basa and whether her ghost, this is Teresita, whether her ghost, which supposedly appeared to this woman, solved her own murder. And I'll say right up front, just so because because this is to me one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. And you can go on the internet and put in Teresita Basa, and you will come up with, oh my God, you should see how many shows there are about this. And there's even a movie made, which I tried to watch, but it was so horrendously bad I quit in 15 minutes, about how her ghost solved her murder. Definitely not haunted, this case. Definitely not. It's ridiculous. But I'm going to explain to you why it's ridiculous and why I don't like to see this kind of thing going on. All right. Hello, everybody in the chat room. Can you see and hear me? That's my first question. Oops, wait a minute. Everybody's just, oh, no, we're not doing this again. Oh, hi. Crystal clear. Oh, good. I changed my camera and I changed my microphone because I was having problem. I wanted to have a really great mic that worked. I got this mic, spent good money on it, and it goes. So I chucked that and put my mic back. Then I wanted to get this better camera because I'm having this fuzzy thing happening with the green screen, especially on my hair here and right here. So I got this new camera and it solved the problem. It didn't buzz anymore. It was perfect, except that it's so incredibly sharp that I look like I was 150 years old. And I'm like, okay, do I want to look that way or do I want to have buzzy head? I'm like, I'll go with a buzzy head. So I'm still on the camera search for a better camera. So, let me see what Lisa has to say. Lisa N says, I have a wild theory about the case. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, but I know this is no place for such speculation, so I'll keep it to myself. Lisa, you can speculate and you can give solid ideas on something based on a thing called evidence. And I'm curious now. Now you got me curious. So when I get through the show, please do throw that out and I'll either go very interesting or I'll start going, Lisa, what have you been drinking? Okay, so anyway, but it is a fascinating case, but for all the wrong reasons, I believe. And by the way, this is my Asia Oceania show. And usually I try to do a case from that part of the world, which is why it's on at Friday at 9 p.m. But this case came to me and I'm like, okay, this woman is from the Philippines. Okay, the case didn't happen in the Philippines, but she moved to the United States. And both these women are Filipinas. So I thought this would be an interesting case to do because some people are bringing up cultural issues with this. And I think it's fascinating. So that's my excuse for doing it on this Friday. Just before I get onward with the show, just let me do the needful here because all those people who have subscribed to me because of Amber Hearst and my video on Amber Hearst are now leaving because I'm not doing a whole bunch of stuff on Amber Hearst. So all my subscribers that flew up are now dropping back down. So anyway, if you can, you like this channel because you really want to understand criminal profiling and crime scene analysis and want logic, subscribe to the channel and support it, please. Like this video, share someplace in a true crime community, and hit the bell. Hit the bell because if you don't get notifications. And also check my playlist because that's where I have all the cases I've already done that you might find interesting. If you'd like to be in the chat room, please do join Patreon, and then you can be in all of the chat rooms for the live shows, which are 6 times a month for cases, 4 for hangouts, and also 2 phone-ins. So those are fun. If you want to support the channel another way, buy one of my books or click on the little $ and do a one-time donation. Okay, that's that. Now let's get on to this really peculiar case. All right, so, that yay! that's hooray for in sign language. Sour Crime is here, which I love that name. It's just great. And Sour Crime has been one of my great subscribers, and she has always had, or he, I don't even know, are you a she or a he? Always great commentary in the comments. And so if you do have comments, and even if you're not a subscriber or whatever, comment below, and that's what makes a good conversation. So please do that. But always great from Sour Crime. So you can admit who you are. Actually, I know, but I keep it quiet. So Molly's here too. Heidi's here. Heidi's one of our newer Patreon folk. And then we have the two Lisas, Lisa S and Lisa N. And Anne is here. And who else is here? Carrie's here. I'm trying to go backwards now, just seeing who's here. Okay, I might have missed somebody. If I did, I'm sorry. Okay, so now on to this case. Now, what's really important here is the question of what is actually known as evidence. This is a serious crime channel. I don't go for a bunch of silly stories and all of that. So I go for a thing called evidence. And there is evidence in this case. It's just how the evidence got to the police, which is kind of concerning. And I have some ideas on that. Anyway, who is Teresita Basa? She was a respiratory therapist from the Philippines. She had no enemies whatsoever. People really liked this woman. She was loved by her coworkers at Edgewater Hospital. So she worked at a hospital to earn her money. And she was also adored by her classmates at Loyola University, where she worked on her thesis and appreciated her family members. She was a musician as well. She was like really a very cool person, it sounds like. So she was a single child of a wealthy couple born and raised in the Philippines. She successfully graduated from Assumption College in Manila, and then she moved to the United States to earn a master's degree in music from Indiana University. Life was going as planned. Even though music played a huge part in her life, she ultimately chose a different path for her line of work. It's called putting food on the table. You know, musicians don't tend to make a lot of money. So you can teach on the side and all these kind of things and sing and all, you know, but you want to eat. Sometimes a solid job helps. So she decided to work in the medical field instead and was trained to become a respiratory therapist. That didn't mean she gave up all her musical stuff. She was still doing that, but she had a good, solid day job. So in 1977, she was 47 years old, genuinely happy with life. At the time, she was living in Chicago and working at the Edgewater Hospital. And she'd just gotten back to school and was studying hard and working on her doctoral thesis. I mean, this is a smart lady at Loyola. In her spare time, she had piano lessons. She held piano lessons in her apartment. So now we're into February, okay? Now, this is where she was living at the time, and she was living in an apartment house. Okay, so there she is at her apartment house. Now, here's what happened. She headed out to work for a shift at the hospital on February 21st in 1977. She then returned to her apartment, and at 7:30 in the evening, she received a phone call from her good friend, Ruth. There's also supposedly another phone call that was going in. I heard that on Crime Junkie. There's not really great detailed information, so I had to go jump, and try to pick out little things that were there in Crime Junkie. And I have a little complaint about Crime Junkie in this case, but they claim that there was somebody else she was also talking to on the phone before her other friend. So supposedly, to somebody, she said that, somebody's at the door. The first person, I think, that somebody was at the door, a male was at the door. She didn't give his name. And he maybe came in at that point that, and they were questioning whether he'd been there for a while. But I think that is all just not true. I think somebody knocked at the door and she went to answer it. Okay. So this is what it says here. Teresita explained she was expecting a male visitor, and Ruth didn't ask for the guy's name or any other details. A while later at 8:40 p.m., Teresita's neighbors from down the hall began smelling smoke, but didn't know where it came from. So they called the fire department, okay? And they came, and they found where it was coming from. It was Teresita's apartment. So they got in there, and they were able to put out the fire. However, when they put the fire out, they found that the fire had not been accidental. On the apartment floor, under a bulky mattress, lay Teresita's body. She was completely naked, and in the center of her chest, a kitchen knife tore through her skin. Detectives were immediately called to the scene. The investigators confirmed the tenant's worst fears that this was a homicide. Apparently, whoever murdered Teresita had started the fire in order to extinguish any evidence of the crime. After stabbing Teresita, the killer threw a pile of clothes on top of her and then lit it on fire. Now, this is where I start disagreeing with what the detectives were thinking. since she had been completely stripped. Okay. Investigators assumed she had probably been raped before she was murdered. But as it turns out, her autopsy showed no sign of sexual assault. This left the detectives confused as to what had happened that night. All right. So eventually what they decided was, because they couldn't find a whole bunch of stuff stolen or anything either, but they thought maybe it was a robbery gone bad. And they came to the conclusion that this was a staged sexual assault to cover up a robbery. What? What? Burglary, robbery, not that big a deal when it comes down to getting put away for, whatever, a few months these days. And even back then. Sexual homicide, that'll get you life. So you don't cover up a smaller crime with a big crime. That just makes no sense. So the fact that they decided this was a staged sexual homicide is crazy. The only reason somebody stages a sexual homicide is if the husband kills the wife and they're going to look at him, then he stages a sexual homicide to say, look, a serial killer broke in and killed my wife. But in this case, the woman's not married. She doesn't have a boyfriend. So whoever came in there, the last thing they're going to do is rob her. And then after they rob her, instead of just running out or just hitting her over the head and knocking her out, they're going to actually take her clothes off, stage a sexual homicide before they stab her. That's just totally ridiculous. Now, so why was there no evidence of a sexual assault? Well, because in a lot of cases, even with many serial killer cases, just because the person hasn't been raped doesn't mean there was not a sexual assault. Doesn't mean he didn't do something to her or ask her to do something to him, right? And that may not leave any specific signs of a sexual assault. So she doesn't necessarily have to suffer. In other words, if there's no semen at the scene, it doesn't mean there wasn't a sexual assault. Also, it could mean that he wiped her off, cleaned her up before he burned her up. And also, if there's no sign of abrasions, some people always point that out, like, well, if she was raped, there'd be this, abrasions in the vaginal area. Some dudes are like really small. They don't leave anything, It's like, even for the rape, the woman's going, are you raping me? Oh, okay. Didn't know. There's just many different reasons. So it could be that it was forced oral sex. It could be that he just wanted to look at her and masturbate. It could be all kinds of different things. So just because you don't have evidence of a sexual assault doesn't mean a sexual assault didn't occur. But I can tell you this, you don't commit a minor crime and cover it by committing staging a sexual homicide. I mean, you'd have to be nuts to do that. That's just like totally backwards. And I will get to this in a minute. Yes, he didn't even take or get very much from her, correct? That is correct. Apparently $30 was in the $30. That's what they claim, or he claimed, because we don't even know, because she wasn't alive to say how much went missing. And I thought it was excessive for some jewelry and whatnot. Apparently 2 items were stolen, pieces of jewelry. Yes, that's it. He didn't get much. Now, mind you, the reason it was considered a robbery later was because he claimed it was. But I'm going to get to that. It's really interesting. And a lot of these, if you go to a lot of the things on the internet and on YouTube, they don't get into the details of what he actually was. They just talk about how this ghost solved the crime, and they don't care about the rest of it, which is why it bugs me, because I believe we should know things truthfully and understand things well and not spread a whole bunch of silly rumors and gossip. So anyway, this woman, so she gets killed. Now, the one thing they found was this one note, and the note it didn't get burned up in the fire. So essentially, let me show you the apartment. We can't really, they did say she put up a struggle. And I think that was because in the apartment, there were signs of things, in spite of the burn, things being knocked over and stuff. So she fought for her life. But so they did have a few things left over that weren't in the fire area. One of them was a note that read, "Get theater tickets for AS." This becomes very important because AS does turn out to be the initials of the killer. Get Theater Tickets kind of confused me because when I found out who the killer was, I'm like, was he a big theater buff or was it something else? And it's a little confusing there because apparently there was supposedly, according to, after I did a lot of research, one little statement that she was working with some people putting on some kind of, I don't know whether it was just a fun little event or whether it was some kind of charity thing or whatever. And maybe those are theater tickets. So she said, oh, I'm going to get those. And he's going to help me out. So I'll give those to him. Don't know. But that was the only clue they thought could be connected. But again, when somebody writes get theater tickets for AS, they don't know when she wrote that. It could have been a month ago and had nothing to do with this case. But that's what they had. So they started investigating. They interviewed her neighbors, her friends, her coworkers, and her classmates. And they came up with nothing, which I find really interesting because when you find out who it is, you're like, who did the police actually properly interview? Because the guy worked in the same building with her. He actually knew her. So, and he lived near her. I mean, how did they not at least come up with his name at some point, which starts with a first name A and last name S? How did they completely overlook this guy? And wait till you find out what kind of guy he was. And then you think, really, how did you overlook this guy? So I wonder how much of we're not getting good information here. Anyway, the detectives couldn't come up with any good solid leads. So after a few short months, her case went cold. And they just sort of think, whatever. So anyway, 5 to 6 months later, they get this call. And it was an officer who called the detective on the case. Told this detective called Detective Strachula, they just received a call from a person claiming to have information about Teresita's murder case. He was then told to get in touch with Dr. Jose Chua, a man who lived in Skokie and who also, his wife also worked at that hospital. So he did make an appointment to talk to him. Okay, so now Dr. Chua, seemed very embarrassed. Now, this is interesting how this all sets up. Seemed very embarrassed to talk to the detective, and he was like very awkward about it. And then he said, okay, do you believe in the occult or anything supernatural? And at that point, I'm going to say they started like rolling their eyes, And let me tell you how this works, because this is important for detectives, all right? When somebody calls you and says they have information, the first thing you want to know is, what exact evidence do you have? And I have people all the time that contact me and say, I know somebody is guilty of this crime or whatever. And I go, okay. And then they start talking. And what happened? I'm like, stop. Tell me one thing that connects him to that crime. Something that actually supports that he did that crime. Well, what I feel is I don't know. No. I don't care what you feel. I don't care what you believe. Tell me one thing that connects this person to the crime. Like, did they know each other? Did they live in the same apartment? Did they, whatever. What piece of information do you have? And if I can't get that, then I usually know they just either are somebody they didn't like and are just talking crap, or they imagine things, or they think they're psychic and they imagine that they know who did it, that kind of stuff. I stop them because I don't have hours of my life to waste on this stuff. I get a lot of calls on stalking. I have somebody stalking me and I say, stop. What's one piece of evidence that you have that the person's stalking you? Well, what's one piece of evidence that the person is stalking you? Do you have a phone messages? Do you have emails? Do you have video? What do you have? Witnesses? And you don't have anything. And that's why the police won't listen to you either. And a lot of times I get a complaint that, I've tried to contact the police. Well, they hear thousands of these stories all the time, and they can't do anything with them. A, because most of the time they're not true, and B, because they don't have any information to work with. Just your opinion goes nowhere. So they're getting over to this place, and they're immediately confronted with, do you believe in supernatural? So I'm sure they're like rolling their eyes. But here's the one thing you want to do. Just because someone says they got the information in a strange way doesn't mean they don't have information. Okay? Because maybe what they're saying is true. It's just not how they got that information. And this, I think, is very, very much so in this case. So anyway, Dr. Chua proceeded to tell the pair of investigators that he believed his wife, Remibias, we'll call her Remy, which is what they call her, because it's a long name. Remy was possessed by Teresita Basa's spirit. Remy, this is very important, I think. Remy was also from the Philippines. Okay, now there's an importance in that. Not so much because the spirit of Teresita would only seek out a woman from her own country. And she speaks Tagalog, so she would speak Tagalog. Now, both of them spoke English because they're living in the U.S., okay? She could have picked anybody else that worked at the hospital, or she could have picked a lady down the way who spoke no Tagalog at all and simply appeared to her. But no, she appears to Remy, who is another Filipina. So there is likely a connection between the two women, not that they don't have any clue who each other are. All right. So Dr. Chua explained that she had started dreaming these odd dreams involving Teresita. According to Dr. Chua, Remy had to try to ignore the dreams. But one day, while she was fast asleep, or at least appeared to be, she began calling on her husband's name, speaking to him in a voice that wasn't her own. Dr. Chua said she was in a trance-like state. He described that Remy seemed to be almost comatose while speaking to him. He was startled by the whole event, as he didn't recognize the voice that was speaking to him. This unfamiliar voice cried out that she was Teresita Basa and that she was desperately needed his help. Okay, mind you, this is like 5 to 6 months after the crime. So the first thing I would say is, if Teresita Basa her spirit was able to contact Remy, why the hell did she wait half a year? You got to ask this question. Why would she wait an entire half a year? Was she busy in the afterlife doing something else? And then said, oh gosh, I forgot, unfinished business. Got to go back to Earth. And no, that woman, she speaks Tagalog. Okay. I was going to wait 6 freaking months. No, I think if you were the spirit who was very upset, you might be there in a week, but she wasn't. It took 6 months. And there's again a good reason for this. All right. Now, the voice coming out of Remy's mouth made some serious, grave statements. She claimed that she had been killed by a man named Alan Showery. A.S. Alan Showery. All right, let's see. Let me put up Alan here. And let's see. I don't have a problem putting up Alan because he's guilty. So I don't have to feel bad about showing his picture. Here he is. Okay, so there he is. Okay, that's Alan. All right. Alan Showery. And she begged Dr. Chua to go to the police with this piece of information. She revealed that Alan had hopped over to her apartment to fix a few things in her television, but ended up killing her. Ultimately, the voice coming from Remy's mouth made a final plea for him to call the police and let them know, and then the voice faded away. Dr. Jose Chua, still startled by what he had just witnessed, made the decision to let it go and forget it. I'm going to say his wife started telling him this story. Not in a trance, not with the spirit of a Teresita, but his wife started telling him this. She had this idea that maybe this dude killed Teresita. And he's like, how do you know that? Why would, like a police officer might, what's the evidence? And so I'm going to say that he was questioning his own wife, not the spirit of Teresita, but his own wife. All right. So then, Time went around, and then Teresita came back. She wanted to know why he hadn't done anything with the information provided. Dr. Jose Chua played along. No. I think Dr. Chua, and by that point, Dr. Chua and Remy had made up the whole story about how they were going to tell the police the story. Okay. And he played along, explained he wasn't going to the cops without any proper proof to back up her claims. I believe that statement. He told his wife, look, you can have all the thoughts you want about this dude. And there's a good reason why she had these thoughts about this dude, but I'm not going to go to the police and help you with this if there's not something that's more solid, because I'm not going to look like a freaking idiot, and they're not going to listen to us either. Okay, so anyway, Dr. Chua said he wasn't going to point a finger at Alan Showery just because a voice coming out of his sleeping wife had told him so, or his awake wife who just had an idea. Annoyed, Teresita's spirit told Jose that if proof was what he wanted, proof is what he would get. I'm going to say at this point, his wife proceeded to try to find more evidence on Alan Showery in order to convince her husband and that they should go forth with this. So eventually, she provided specific details. The voice revealed that right before he burned her place down, Alan had stolen some valuable items from her apartment, unique pieces of jewelry that her dad had bought in France as a gift to her mom. After stealing from her, Alan had given the jewelry to his girlfriend. Okay, here's the jewelry that was stolen. This is actually true. This is the jewelry that was taken. Now, I want to point out something about serial killers. One of the best ways to catch a serial killer is the jewelry they steal from the victim that they give to the girlfriends. I've often complained over and over to police departments. You need, if a jewelry is stolen from the victim, you need to tell the public this. And they go, oh no, we don't want to give that information up to the public because then if somebody comes in and confesses, we won't know. Or he'll throw the jewelry away. Okay. At least, okay, don't admit it like in the first day, but give it 6 months and then go to the public with it, because so many times they give it to their girlfriends. And if that information comes out on the news and that girl's going, oh, crap. And then she might call the police. You know, you might catch the guy. So apparently he gave this stuff to his girlfriend, which, can I say the word serial killer? Okay. So anyway, then Teresita's voice gave Dr. Jose Chua the names and phone numbers of a few people who would surely be able to identify the jewelry. In other words, this is 6 months later, and she's doing her own detective work. Jose was still skeptical about the whole thing, yet he decided it was worth a shot. So the next day he called the police. Now he's got enough info, he's going to call the police. So anyway, the detectives didn't want to take him seriously because of the claim that his wife was, having this ghost visiting with her and taking over her. But because of the AS issue, all right, that they're like, okay, maybe the dude knows something, but he doesn't know how to bring it to us. For whatever reason, they don't want to just say, this is information they found, or they're scared of the guy they found it on. So they're coming up with this crazy story. So they're like, we don't care what the crazy story is. At this point, there's something called evidence. Remember when I said, go, if you're going to come say something happened, what have you got for some evidence? Now she's got some. She's got AS means Alan Showery, and she's got the jewelry issue. And Alan works at the hospital. So there's good reason now to go check him out. Actually, there was good reason to go check him out way back when, but somebody slipped up. All right. So anyway, they went and checked him out. First, they decided to do a background check on him. Okay. They found out he lived near Teresita. You know what else about this dude? The dude had 2 sexual assaults on his record in women's homes, and he was a burglar. What does that sound like? Oh, yeah, Teresita. I mean, why wasn't this check done earlier? So that they'd find that a guy who worked in the hospital, whose name was AS, who actually was it's questionable. She's supposedly a respiratory therapist, and he was supposedly a respiratory technician. But then other things say he was an orderly. But he did have contact with her. So how AS didn't show up as Alan Showery with a criminal record of sexual assault and burglary, I do not know. Because serial killers are often both. They sexually assault and they commit burglaries, because both of them often mean you break into somebody's residence. And if you're committing a sexual assault, you might as well take crap while you're there. Or, it's just like breaking into people's houses. And if there's a woman there, that's useful too. So anyway, they found out that, yes, he worked at the same hospital, but in a different department. Okay. So I don't understand that quite because of the respiratory issue. Again, the information is a little crappy. After talking with several of Alan's coworkers, they were dumbfounded when they heard one of them mention that Alan had indeed fixed Teresita's TV for her. The guy's got a big mouth. At that point, the investigators decided it was time to pay the man a visit. They dropped by his apartment unannounced and found him relaxing with his girlfriend, Yanka Kamluk, at home. After some small talk, they asked him to accompany them to the police station. By the way, he'd been with her for 7 years, and she was quite pregnant at the time. They told Alan they were investigating the murder of Teresita, and because he was one of her acquaintances, they hoped he would be able to help them. He agreed. So during their investigation, Alan denied ever visiting her home. When they confronted the suspect with the fact that workers at the hospital had overheard him talking about fixing her television, he changed his story. He had admitted he'd gone to her place, but when he got there, he hadn't had the right tools, so he left. Okay, apparently also, according to somebody else, he actually had quite a few times he went to her apartment and helped her out with things, and she gave him money. So that's interesting. So if that's true, there was more of an ongoing relationship as far as, help, just guy needing money and helping her, little handyman work. Why would they not know this? And this also means that a lot of times when a person's like this, somebody keeps trying to help them by giving them money, they start seeing you as, they start being more interested in you as to what you can give them, either money-wise, or if he's a serial killer or like a serial rapist, he's up for that too. So anyway, they talked to his girlfriend, and so she said, well, he doesn't even know how. He said that let's see, he said he returned to his place because he was having electrical problems, and he wanted to fix those electrical problems in his home. His girlfriend said, what are you talking about? He can't fix that crap. Then they asked they sat down with Yanka, and she told the detectives that she was completely unaware of any electrical issues in the apartment. She also mentioned that if there were any problems, he'd have no idea how to fix them. Then this is a very interesting point. So the detectives then asked Yanka if she had received any jewelry from Alan lately. She told them that he had gifted her a few unique pieces of jewelry back in February, calling them belated Christmas gifts. Okay, so she was wearing the jewelry at the time. This is important. When they came to talk to her, she was wearing the jewelry. Now, if she's wearing the jewelry, that means if somebody could have seen her wearing the jewelry, all right? And she might have talked about getting those belated Christmas gifts just around the time a woman got murdered, So she was wearing the pendant around her neck and the golden pearl ring on her fingers. Upon seeing the jewelry, they asked her she'd go to the police station. Like her husband, Yanka agreed. It was obvious she had a little idea of what she was about to go down. And so then people came down, identified the jewelry, and then he confessed to the crime. Okay. He actually even wrote a letter that said, I'm going down the river here. So, take care of my kid because she's pregnant with it and have a good life. And then he claimed later that the police threatened him with putting his pregnant girlfriend in jail. And that's why he confessed when he didn't really do it. Okay. So now the story he gave to the cops was this, that when he knocked on the door, she opened the door, then she turned around to lock the door. When she did this, he grabbed her around the neck, started choking her, choked her out till she passed out. Then this is what he claims. Then he stripped her naked to make it seem like there was a sexual assault. Then he stabbed her once in the chest. Then he looked for some money. What? Nonsense. This is just nonsense. I'm going to say he might, after he killed her, want to look for some money and get some jewelry. But I'm going to say he had rent to pay. Now, usually people don't have that much money laying around the house. So unless he knew she had money for some specific reason, like let's say she always paid her rent in cash. So he would know she had, $500-600 around her house at the 70s. Then it makes sense that he would break in or get in there and try to rob her of that money. But the fact is, there's no indication that she ever kept big quantities of money around the house, and he probably knew that. So he's not going to go in there to kill her for $30 to pay his rent. That's just a garbage excuse. He doesn't want to get nailed for sexual homicide. You see how that works? So he's going to claim it was a robbery that he freaked out on, as opposed to a sexual homicide, which means he's a serial killer. Because you get much more years for being a serial killer. All right. Now, he confessed. He was charged with murder. He went to trial. The jury couldn't make a decision. Now, what happened here was that apparently the defense threw out the fact that, crazy lady said the ghost came and got her. And then there was the issue about whether the police forced him into this, and the jury became a hung jury. So the judge ordered a new trial. At that point, he confessed and accepted. He said, I'm guilty. Now, the reason he did this is I found this interesting. This is one thing again that annoys me with Crime Junkie. There's two things that bothered me. One is that they gave credence to this ghost thing. In other words, you don't have to do that. You can say this is what was said, and it's nonsense. But they want to play psychic stuff could be true. No. This is supposed to be a crime channel, not a psychic channel. Secondly, they said that they believed that he felt guilty about what he had done, and that's why he confessed. No, he didn't. He was given the lowest sentence. If he confessed at that point, he was going to got 14 years and instead of life. And he only served 5 years. Can you believe it? Just 5 years. So, hey, that worked out well for him, didn't it? And check this out. This made me really laugh. This is something put out. This is how dumb things are. I tell you, just some things are just so dumb. Check this. This was put out in a Chicago paper. Where are Teresita Basa and Alan Showery 39 years after her voice from the grave sent him to prison? Well, I'm going to say she's still buried, because she died 39 years ago, you idiot. Apparently, Alan Showery got out and is running around the world. God knows what he's been doing. So that's concerning. But she is definitely dead. She's not running around anywhere. So let me see what else you have to say. I want to go on to about the issue of psychics and the psychic issue and crime, solving crimes. All right, here we go. Let's see what we got back. I'm going to check your comments first. Okay, Lisa says, my theory was that Remy knew it was him because she was having an affair with a killer and got revenge on him when he spurned her. No evidence, and Pat's suspicion embellishment is far more likely. Interesting you say that. I actually did think of that too, Lisa. So it's not so unreasonable. Here's why. Remy and Alan had worked together for a year at least in the same department. They had some issues. She eventually, got creeped out by him eventually. He also ratted on her to the management, and she got fired because of him. Something about her work not being proper or whatever. She was fired because of him. And then right after she was fired, she got some weird phone call, she says, which she thinks was him, like a prank call from him. And then the very next day or two, suddenly the voice of Teresita comes through Remy. Yes, I would say this. She knew a lot more about Alan Showery, even at the time of Remy's death. Now, could she have had an affair with him? It's possible. He's a psychopath. Okay, he is a psychopath. So the question is, her husband was a renowned surgeon of some sort. And if you all know how surgeons work, they work a lot, like 90 hours a week. Sometimes in those situations, there are people who stray, especially with people they work with. So now you're working with this guy every day, and maybe you became friendly. I'm not saying she did. I'm just saying, if I were looking at this case, trying to understand where she got her information from, maybe so. Maybe over those 5 months where she was too friendly with him, or prior to that, she knew more things about him. And maybe she knew about his girlfriend. And maybe she knew what the girlfriend got for her belated Christmas presents. I think she definitely had insider information. Absolutely, have no question about that. I do not believe for a minute that she was suffering from some kind of a spiritual visit. Now, second reason, Lisa, there might be some reason that might have some more validity. If she is telling her husband, in other words, she wants her husband, she thinks she's feeling guilty because this woman has been murdered by a guy she thinks murdered her. But maybe she doesn't want to admit to her husband why she knows things she shouldn't know. Why was she so close to Alan that she would know about all of these things? So instead, she gets the spirit of Teresita in her so that she doesn't have to admit to her husband that maybe they were too friendly or friendly enough or whatever. So Lisa, not a bad theory at all. I do not have a problem with it. See? Yeah, that's not so unreasonable. If I were a detective, I'd be looking into just that thing. I'd be taking her into the back room and I'd be going, okay, Remy, did you have a relationship with Alan? Because I need to know where you got this information from. I know you didn't want to let your husband know something. So where did you get the information from? That's what I'd be asking. Yeah, I sure would. So I think it's always all a big coincidence. Yeah. And also the revenge thing that you point out too, that he got her, Alan got Remy fired. He did get her fired. So she was probably not too happy about being, him ratting her out either. So maybe they had this, somewhat closeness, and they had a falling out. He ratted her out. She got fired. She's like, well, then I'm going to give up the information to the police about your behaviors. How about that? But clearly, he actually is the guy that killed Teresita. There's no question about that. His criminal background, the fact his girlfriend's running around with the jewelry on, I'm going to say, yeah, he did it. There's no question. Let's see. Remy must have been so frustrated the cops didn't investigate the obvious to her. That may be also true. So she had to do something desperate to get their attention. That may also be true because, as I said, what kind of investigative work were you doing? I'm pretty much shocked that the police did not find who AS was somewhere along the way, considering his background, the fact they worked in the same hospital, and that people did know she had some interactions with him. So somebody didn't do good investigative work. That's what I'm going to say. Yeah, 5 years is pretty scary for the crime. You betcha. Heidi says, workplace drama gone wrong. Maybe. I think poor Teresita, I think she was just a victim of a serial killer. That's what I think happened. She was nice to a guy. He got into her place and he did whatever he did, even if they couldn't prove that it was a sexual assault. I'm going to say it was. Now, let's get to my topic of psychics and crime. Because I get so pissed about this. This is one of my soapbox things. There are two shows that are very good on television. One is called The Mentalist. The other is called Psych. Both of them have guys pretending to be psychics, and both of them are actually criminal profilers. Because what they do is look at the evidence and analyze the crime scene, and they do crime scene analysis and behavioral analysis, and then they go, oh, I see a guy walking. Because it's hard to get departments to actually hire criminal profilers. So the joke of it here is that they're hired on as psychics, and but they're not. And at least the mentalist, Patrick, is that his name? Yeah, he completely confesses he was a con artist and really good at cold readings and things like that. So I'm sorry, I have no even little place in my heart for psychics. And I'm going to tell you why. If in your own personal life, you want to believe that in psychics, if you want to go to a fortune teller and find out what's happening in your life, if you think you're having dreams or something and connecting with the dead, bully for you. I don't care. What I do care is when you interfere with criminal investigations. That I do have an issue with. I do have a problem when you make money off of people. I do have a problem with those Hollywood psychics who tell people they're talking to their dead relatives, and they're making millions off of this garbage, which is all fake and showmanship. It's all kinds of clever things. Good cold reading, good profiling methodologies. Sometimes they cheat. They put microphones places to get information. Sometimes they do background checks. Sometimes they do all kinds of things to gather information to convince people. And then they're very good manipulators, very good con artists. They're talented magicians, in other words. The difference between a psychic and a magician, a psychic that makes money off of this, I say just if you think you're psychic, a psychic who makes money off of these things, and a magician, the difference is the magician tells you he's fooling you. And then the fun part is to go, wow, that is amazing. I couldn't see how you did it. I don't know how you fooled me. The psychic says he's not fooling you. And that's just a damn lie. And that I find offensive because you're abusing people, manipulating people. And to me, that's a level of psychopathy. So I have no place in my heart for that. And when you get involved in police investigations, you're hurting the victims, you're hurting the investigation. And you're not doing anything that helps. Now, sometimes it's very tricky Some of these supposed psychics are very tricky. They will do even things like drive 1,000 miles to go check out the area to find the barn, the tree, or whatever. And then they'll call and say, I'm a psychic. I live on the other side of the country, and I can see where this happened. And, make it look real. They also can just do a lot of guessing. And like the clock that's right, the stop clock that's right twice a day, if 1,000 psychics guess and 2 are right, it's because they got lucky and the other 998 are completely wrong. And so when they get involved in these things, families believe in them. Families will sometimes pay them tons of money to try to find their loved one through psychic stuff, which is garbage. And even if they work for free for the police, just by getting the notoriety, then they can charge other people for other things. So they get free advertising that way. So the question comes down to, have any psychics really help solve crimes? Now, here's what's going to happen. If you go online and put in have psychics solve crimes, you will come up with website after website after website saying they have indeed solved crimes. I went to one and said, they solved these 20 crimes. Another one, they solved these 20 crimes. Oh, look at all the crimes they've solved. This is not from the police. This is from the psychics themselves or people who are pushing the psychic stuff. So there's no actual evidence they ever did anything. Okay. It's just, it's on the internet. So people believe things that are written in written form. They go, oh my God, it must be true. Now, I did find this one site and I thought it was really good. And I like this one because very honest. It's called the Psychic Detectives. Now, they're talking about different claims. All right. Here's a claim. Psychics have the power to see things in the past, present, and future that ordinary people cannot. And as a consequence of this, the police regularly consult with them for help in solving crimes, particularly crimes involving missing persons or homicides, when their own investigations stall. That is not true. The only reason they ever do that is because people start harassing them and saying, why don't you use psychics? So sometimes I'll let one psychic come in, and they should never do it. If you're a police officer, police detective, never, ever let a psychic near your investigation because you're only pushing this garbage. Yes, I know it gets people off your back, but you should have the strength to say, psychics do not solve crimes and we will not work with them. We will work with a criminal profiler. Yeah. No, a lot of times I work with psychics before criminal profilers because they won't let the psychic see the actual evidence or the entire police reports. Because if I come in, I'm going to want to see everything. I want to see all your evidence, your police reports, your interviews, your forensic reports. I get to see inside the investigation. I can see where things aren't going right. And they don't want that. But if a psychic's never going to touch anything, they're just going to sit outside the investigation and make up crap. They're like, okay, we'll let them do that. So that's why they don't want profilers in, and sometimes they'll accept psychics. So here we go. The overwhelming majority of police officials are highly skeptical of alleged psychics and very rarely, if ever, responsible for inviting them into the investigations. Often the police treat psychics just as they treat other kooks who gravitate to major crimes, politely but disinterestedly. So that is usually, and then as far as they're saying, they can come up with nothing, that nobody solved anything. Here we go. Claim. Psychic detectives have been responsible for solving numerous cases that have had the local police baffled. That's absolute junk. That is not true. And these are the sites that are put out by them. Now, they had a good thing here. Let's see. I want to see where the ones where I know these are true, that they didn't actually solve any of these crimes. Where'd they put that? Hold on a second. It was my favorite part of this. Let me find it. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Okay. Here, for example, these are the examples. And I think these are great examples. All right. So let's see. In two highly publicized cases a couple of decades ago, numerous psychics made pronouncements about a series of murders of Black teenagers in Atlanta, Georgia, and the kidnapping of General Dozier. Yet absolutely nothing of value resulted. Okay? Indeed, they were so completely wrong that was just laughable. Okay? One of the examples is none of the psychics believed Dozier, I don't know how you pronounce his name, to be alive, yet he was released unharmed. Oh, you thought he was dead. His body's over there. No, he's alive, idiots. These are not isolated cases. They are completely typical of the successes of so-called psychic detectives. Such grotesque and continual failures have had no impact on public public, the belief the public still has in psychics, no matter how many times they're wrong, a lot of the public still believes in psychics. It's really sad. And let's see, where is this? Because a different impression is made about the achievements of self-proclaimed great psychics, and it's usually got from the news media and from the own psychics, little media channel there. All right. For example, here's a noteworthy case. A famous psychic pronounced to the press that she had given the name of the Atlanta serial killer to the police, when in fact she had given the police 42 names. She like everybody in town. And how about this? A recent case is completely typical. An 11-year-old boy, remember this kid? Sean Hornbeck, mysteriously vanished while out riding his bicycle in 2002. Sylvia Brown, remember Sylvia Brown? She used to do Montel. And, I loved Montel. I used to like doing a show, but I hated the fact he had Sylvia Brown on there, and I thought he should ethically not have ever allowed that woman on. She told the shocked parents on live TV that Sean was dead and provided vague details on where his body might be found and a more specific description of his killer. And in January of 2007, while tracking down another kidnapped child, police found Sean alive and well, having been held captive for more than 4 years. His kidnapper is not the slightest degree matched the description given by Brown. And the same thing happened with I always remember the Chandra Levy case, because I got the tips in for Chandra Levy because I did so much television on her. And oh my God, she was everywhere but where she was, which was Rock Creek Park. Not one psychic who contacted me came up with Rock Creek Park. She was in mine shafts. She was, in waterways. She was every place, but not in Rock Creek Park. So this crap needs to stop. It's one of these things that the media needs to stop pushing this crap. People on YouTube need to stop doing that. And if you actually look through all the YouTube things, it's all about how this could truly be true. Really could be true that it was her ghost actually committed the crime. No, there's no ghost. Not committed the crime. No ghost solved her own murder. It's garbage. It's garbage. What we have is somebody who knew something, who used that as a ruse in order to get that information across to the police. And as I think, Lisa, I think you might not be entirely wrong that the reason she went and did this is because she had to find a way without confessing how much she knew and why she knew it. I have no problem with that theory at all, Lisa. I don't think it was out to lunch there at all. I think it was pretty good profiling, in my opinion. We don't know that, but if I were a police detective, if I were looking at this case as a profiler, I would say to the police detectives, you need to find out what her relationship was with this guy. Find out whether there was more going on there that she would be able to access this information, as opposed to having had the spirit of Teresita descend into her body, that's just silly, absolutely silly, so psychics need to get out of police work. And personally, I think, if you want to if you believe in psychic stuff on your own time and don't charge people and don't make other people believe in things you believe in, it's okay with me. So Lisa says, why, thank you, Pat. I will stop profiling now while I'm ahead. No, keep going. Now, hey, this is what this channel is about as well. So I'm hoping that people come to this channel. This is an educational channel, not just a storytelling channel. Ooh, there was a ghost that solved the crime. No, this is an educational channel teaching you crime scene analysis, logic, and profiling. So if it's working, Lisa, it's working, and I'm happy. That's exactly what I want it to do. It's like, I don't like armchair profilers in the sense that they're not using any kind of evidence. A lot of what called armchair profiling is just people gossiping on the internet and spreading rumors and stories, and people that won't pay attention to any of the evidence because they just go anywhere with it's just nonsensical stuff and claim it's, this could be true. No, that's not real profiling. So I don't have a problem with people analyzing evidence and trying to understand it. And I think, because that's what makes us a more logical person. That's what makes us understand things better. And hopefully we'll make better detectives in the future, because that's what detectives do. They're criminal profilers. So I want every detective, whether they're robbery or whether they're in the rape squad or whether they're in homicide, to learn more and more about how to analyze crime and use logic. then we solve more crimes. I think that's great. And did they ever figure out who killed Chandra Levy? They arrested a guy. Did I not do the Chandra? I did Chandra Levy, didn't I? I think I did. Didn't I do the case on Chandra Levy? No. Yeah. Okay. Check my playlist, and I believe I did the whole thing on Chandra Levy. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did because they arrested a guy, went to trial and everything, but I never believed he did it. His name was Guandique. I never believed he did it, but he was a kind of a creepy dude who ran around the park attacking women. It's true, but yeah, he didn't really match the crime, and the stuff they said that he didn't make any sense. So anyway, he ended up. Sort of the whole thing, the charges were eventually dropped and he went on his way. So the case is still now unsolved. It's still now, but look at my video on that, which I'm pretty sure I did the video on it. And I explain way more in detail about what happened with the Chandra Levy case. So there we go. Thanks for sharing your theory, Lisa. I loved it. I did do Chandra Levy. Okay, good. I've done so many now that I forget what I've done, but yes, I'm glad you said I did Chandra Levy. I was pretty sure I did, because I did so much when it first came out. It's one of the first big cases I talked about on television when it happened. When I first started into TV, that was one of the cases. And I did a lot of studies, and I live in Washington, D.C. area. So I drove around where the congressman lived to where she got, where her body was found, to seeing what access points there were to that part of the trail. So I was more involved in that than some. Well, that was the congressman. It's our crime. I think it was the married boyfriend. That's the congressman. And they couldn't prove it 100%. That's true. They had trouble proving it. I think a lot of them believed it was him, especially when he went through. I think he went to Alexandria to throw away a watch box that was connected. So, he was a little shady. Oh, it was early on. So about a year ago, I'm going to say. Oh, that's nice. Thank you, Heidi. I love the Chandra Levy show. Okay. That's say it's been a while. So sometimes I think I have to go back and watch my own shows to find out what I said. Because people will say, Pat, when you said this, and I'm like, did I say that? So, would you give me the actual minute during the show? Because I don't want to do 2 hours to find that spot. So if you're commenting on that and you want me to respond, I need to know the exact minute so I can look at what I said and see whether you're quoting me correctly. Because I've had people misquote me. They watch my show and then they misquote me and say, you said this. And I'm like, it does not sound like me. Or something I would have said on that case. And I find out that they didn't quite have that right. So yeah. But so anyway, that's my Friday night not ghost story. Okay. Not ghost story. But I think a fascinating whole issue about, how do you handle it when somebody calls you up and says, this happened, and do the police listen? And I think the police had to listen because at least the woman was connected with a place of work. If it had been a woman who lived on the other side of the world, somebody called up, let's say, somebody called up from the Philippines, or somebody just called up from wherever and said, oh, I had a dream. As a matter of fact, they point that out and Crime Junkie, they do this. And I was like, oh, don't say this. Apparently they had to bring this up. Somebody on Reddit, and by the way, Reddit can be very useful for finding links to things. So I'm not putting down Reddit because I've gotten a lot of good links from that site. But some woman said she suddenly had this dream. She'd never been to Chicago. She didn't know who Teresita Basa was. She had this weird dream about this woman coming up to her and saying these things. And then she found out 2 days later it was Teresita Basa. And she had known nothing about the case before she had this dream. That's called a liar. This is called a total liar. This is someone who now has made up this story, and now she put it on Reddit, and now it ends up on Crime Junkie. Don't put this junk up. It's junk, just don't. So anyway, that's very nice of you. That's very nice of you, Sour Crime. And here's a good point though I want to make on the fact that you're saying that, you haven't found one you don't like, but once in a while, I may do a show which for whatever reasons you do not feel like I'm correct on my analysis, or you're really somehow you're really connected to this case and you just want to see it a certain way. There are there are cases which people really hang on. One is the West Memphis Three. Another is Madeleine McCann, Martha Moxley. These are some really big cases where people get very, very incensed if you do not agree with their viewpoint. And I really don't want people to throw babies out with bathwater. And, I point this out because Ken Maines, I really like his show. And he's one of those I recommend to watch because I think his show is excellent. And he's going to give his own experience. And he goes through and he describes the evidence and what he thinks the evidence means. And I love his show. We disagree on the West Memphis Three. He thinks they're innocent. I think they're guilty. But what I do is I don't go, well then, Ken Maines, you're worthless. You're a worthless detective because you don't agree with me. I don't think that's necessary. I think even in a group of people who are analyzing a case, you can have disagreements on who the main suspect is and what the evidence means. I mean, it's an effort. And the same thing can happen even if you had a professional jury, because, I don't like why did the jury not, why did they get a hung jury in this case? I don't know, probably shouldn't have, but again, civilian jury. But let's say you had a professional jury and on the West Memphis Three, and I was on there and Ken Maines was on there, we would disagree. And then we would have to argue the evidence and why we're analyzing it a certain way. I don't know where we would end up, but I would still have respect for him. And I think that we shouldn't have this gut emotional response because somebody thinks something different than we do. I think the important thing is, do they at least explain why they come up with what they came up with, why they think this evidence means whatever they think this evidence means. Like Martha Moxley, I do not believe Michael Skakel is guilty of her murder. I don't. I find the top suspect is the tutor Littleton. Some people disagree with me. But, I'm going to stand by it because I think that's what the evidence support. I think the evidence does not support Skakel's involvement. But, if you disagree with me, that's okay. I mean, we're never going to shoot 100% with that, in every case with everybody. But we can still learn from each other. And we can still understand how we analyze evidence. And sometimes sometimes you're just wrong, I mean, I'm human. I could just be wrong, And it's like, that sucks. I'm proven completely wrong. I'm like, ooh, we're not machines. So I think that's important. Let's see what Lisa, you think of very good scenarios in the cases that seem to make little sense. Well, very good. But I found so far that, Lisa, you do at least look at the evidence and come up with what is logical based on that evidence. And that to me is what's important. Because when I see people come up with theories that are like, and I'm like, that has absolutely nothing to do with anything. There's not one shred of evidence that supports whatever the heck you came up with, I mean, I've heard some really wild stuff. And I'm like, where is that? I mean, as a matter of fact, we can talk about Martha Moxley in that case. The Skakels, because what happened was after Michael Skakel got convicted and they were trying to get him out, the problem was they had already let Littleton off the hook. So Littleton could never be taken, to trial. And so he was just out of the picture. Okay. So they gave him a little deal there. So the problem was when they were trying to get Michael Skakel out, they came up with an alternative theory, which is these three guys from New York City, like these three black guys from New York City that came up to Connecticut and said, we're going to go, what is it, caveman on a girl. And so they entered that area and went caveman on Martha Moxley. And I'm like, what? First of all, it's stupid. Second of all, there's no evidence to support that whatsoever. And when Martha Moxley left Tommy Skakel and was walking back to her house, she only had like a very short period of time. So somebody had to already be there seeing her going to her house when they attacked her. And there was just no evidence that three guys just happened to be there at that exact moment to attack her. And it was just nonsense. But, I know what they were probably doing that just to try to come up with some other suspects. But to me, I'm sorry, that was a ridiculous theory. So, Molly, I think you're getting me mixed up with Lisa S., who has heaps of original ideas. Too many Lisas. Both of you have some good ideas. Let's put it that way. So anyway, that's it for the not ghost story tonight. I'm going to be doing, what am I doing on Sunday? I already told you. The baby. The baby. Somebody tell me what I'm doing on Sunday. I'm drawing my blank here. The one with the little baby. What is it? No, I'm just feeling stupid here. Okay. What's her name? Somebody here. Thank you, Sabrina Eisenberg. Yes, I'm doing Sabrina Eisenberg on Sunday. And that's her, she's one of the first babies that disappeared and out of her crib that really made people question were the parents involved. And so, yeah. And I did go do a show. I think it was Montel Williams that I sat on the stage with them, and it was creepy. Okay, that's all I can say. And I'll tell you the whole thing on Sunday. Lisa says, thank you, Pat. I really wanted to hear a non-paranormal analysis about this, and you delivered as always. Oh, you're most welcome. I'll probably lose about 20 subscribers who love psychic stuff. That's a problem with not being, I think that's why sometimes Crime Junkie does that. They're like, it could be this or it could be that, because they don't want to piss anybody off, because then you lose your subscribers. So a lot of people do it could be this, it could be that. But in my opinion, if I'm going to do something that's real, and I'm going to talk about evidence, I can't do that. I'm going to say it could be this, and it's not going to be that. I'm going to have to be honest. And, if I lose people, I lose people. It's just the way I do it. So, the Watts case. Oh, yes. Oh, sorry. The Watts case was the first show of Pat's I saw and got me subscribed. Yeah, that was actually, is that the first show? I know I did one. That was my first show. I think it was actually my first show. I'm afraid to even go back and look at it because, the whole thing was new to me. So I have a few of those shows in the beginning, which, I know I struggle more with than I do today because all the electronics and being on camera, just talking and, very different from doing television work. Soundbite is a lot longer, like 2 hours. But Chris Watts, what a piece of work. Yeah. But yeah. So anyway, I will hopefully see you guys on Sunday. It's going to be early this Sunday at 1 p.m. Because my granddaughter's having her final soccer game at 4 p.m. So I got to get the show in before I go to the soccer game. So it'll be at 1 p.m. And again, if you're new to the channel and you're still here, like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time, I hope.